Well, hello and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. I have a really exciting interview for you to listen to today from filmmaker and writer. Her name is Vandana Kohli, and I actually had the pleasure of being on a panel with her. And it was a panel about a couple of weeks ago, and it was put on by the independent booksellers in India. And it was a wonderful panel talking about my book and her book. This is her book. She has the book out right now called Hinge, Rediscovering Emotional and Mental Wellness. But she's done so much more than that. She also has a fascinating documentary out right now, which is called The Subtext of Anger. She just released a song that is incredibly popular because she's a musician as well. And I was familiar with her work because for years she wrote a column in the Week magazine called Mindscape. And until I didn't realize it was her until we were just talking in this interview. Anyway, I hope that you enjoy my interview with Vandana Kohli as much as I enjoyed interviewing this fascinating person. I am so excited to welcome Vandana Kohli to the Terri Cole Show. Hey, Vandana, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Terry, for having me on your show.
So exciting. So we have much to talk about. Your newish book, Hinge, which is wonderful, and lots of other stuff. So why don't we just take it from the top? What inspired you to write Hinge?
Well, Hinge, Terry, as you know, you've probably been through the book. Hinge is a journey which takes you through, the social context when somebody experiences emotional or mental tumult. It's not just the person, it's a social context as well. So there's something that's prodding you from the outside and you're reacting to it. And so, Hinge is a journey. It takes you through a social construct, which is in the form of normal, which is the first section of the book. And then once there is emotional and mental, I won't say trauma, but tumult, then it leads you into what is it that unhinges you. So it talks about all the emotions and the experiences that happen when there is all this flux happening within you. It talks about depression, it talks about anger, it talks about resistance. And then it takes you through that, and that is literally like going through the abyss. And then the third section is called Hinge, which is how do you find your way out of the abyss to hinge yourself back to a sense of a centered, stable, yet a dynamic point where you may rediscover your emotional and mental wellness.
I love it. And that is the subtitle of the book, right? It says Rediscover Emotional and Mental Wellness. So I want to ask you, how did the pandemic inspire this book or anything, or were you already doing it before we were sort of locked down and a lot of people were talking more openly about mental wellness?
The book, I think, has been in the making for a long time, and I got down to working on it before the pandemic. But what the lockdown allowed me to do was to sit down and finish it, and then to review it. And in that sense, that's the connection it has to the pandemic. But other than that, I think my concerns of emotional and mental tumult and disturbance and, all the experiences that come with it were something that I'd been researching, I'd been writing on, I'd been reading on, I'd been experiencing in my own context, I'd been observing. All of that had already been happening for a while. Yeah.
You wear a lot of hats. So you're a filmmaker, and you're a writer, and you're a singer, and you play the piano, and you have I just watched this beautiful video that you did of a new song. So I wonder, what for you, because I was so fascinated when I really started digging into your background, I was like, this woman does it all, kind of. What propels you for all of this different kinds of expression?
Well, pretty much I think the answer is in your question, because they're all different forms of expression. They're different forms of different mediums of expression. Music actually came to me when I was a child, and a lot of my friends back from school and college, and as well as my other friends, know me first as a musician. I don't think I'm a great musician because my technique is not very good, but I feel it so strongly that I just have to express myself sometimes. And I think in music, what I find most compelling is that when you begin to sing, and if others join in or you compel them to sing through the music that's happening, then, that is really, really rejuvenating and beautiful. That is the power of music. So music is a passion. It's as far back as I can remember, music in some way has been a part of my life. Then, of course, there's filmmaking, which is what my professional training is about. And then the writing, which is, I love writing. I think, when you put a pen to paper, of course, that's metaphorical now, but I still make my notes. I still make my notes using a pen, a pen, a writing, cursive writing, rather than typing it out if I can help it, though not the book, of course, or not long pieces. But
right.
but yes, but I love that. I love that that it's you, it's your pen, it's what you're writing on, and it's your thoughts. Film is a completely different ballgame because you have something in your mind's eye. There's something also that has to be communicated further. There's an entire team, including the camera person, including the editor. I usually sit on the edits myself. That's my professional training. And so so that you have to bring a lot of people, you have to bring a lot of vision along, so that it matches yours, or you go along with what's coming your way. So they're all different forms of expression. I love them all, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to delve into all of them as and when.
Amazing. So do you think there is a mental health crisis today? Because a lot of what we're talking about in the book, a lot of what my book is about, is helping people get to either rediscover mental wellness or discover it for the first time to a degree. So what are your thoughts on there being kind of a mental health crisis, like worldwide, not just India where you are, not just US?
I do think, Terry, that there is a crisis because I think there is too much digital interfacing. And it's a beautiful tool. You and I wouldn't be having this conversation if we didn't have this tool. It's amazing. It really is. I don't mean to disrespect anybody's effort or the technology.
Right.
But at the same time, there is an overload. It's an excess. And what does that do, therefore? You're in your mind all the time.
Right.
Look at the young people. I'm concerned. I mean, it's definitely something of concern. They're constantly hooked to a screen. When you do that, your mind is in micro mode. But more importantly, there's all this information coming to you. You're distracted over all these platforms. And therefore, what part of the brain are you using? That part of the brain which is built for instant reactions. So there's all this coming at you, and you're instantly reacting. And so a lot of the human mind, which is, I'm told, built for deep, reflective thought, so much of the brain is for that, is not being used.
Right.
So therefore, you're becoming more and more reactive, and therefore that means you're getting more and more. There's lesser and lesser resilience. There's less tolerance, and you're going to constantly keep reacting, and you need more and more stimulation, and that stimulation is going to get more and more extreme.
So true, just like any addiction, right?
Exactly, and it's therefore that I think there is a crisis, and I think the sooner we recognize it, the better it is for everybody.
I so agree, especially with the younger generation. And, in my history, I still do, like highly visible clients. And it used to be 20 years ago, the only people who were highly visible and having the experience of sort of what fame brings, which is all of these eyes on you, which is creates a self-consciousness within the person where you feel like every move you make, someone is watching. Now that experience can happen to anyone who spends a lot of time, right? Exactly. Right. It is happening.
It is happening to everybody, and that's exactly the point. You framed it so well that you have these eyes following you all the time, And one hears often of stories of how this person's made it big and that person's made it big. Like just recently in the newspapers out here, we heard of this young boy who was turning the ball in a certain way. You know, cricket is very big in India. It's a sport. It's like religion, really. It's that big. And there was a boy who was turning the ball a certain way, and he got discovered. But for all the people who are discovered, there are millions who are not, and who are being given the hope that, you know, if you're on screen and if you're posting enough and if you have enough followers, you're going to be discovered. And imagine the kind of restlessness that is creating within a person, and therefore the anxiety that why is it not happening to me and when is it going to happen to me? So it's an illusion.
It is.
You know,
and it moves you away from, think about what it moves you away from too, where I'll put all my effort into this public facing stuff, which means, is there time to become masterful at other things? Can you learn other things? I mean, you started in film a long time ago, correct?
Sorry, I lost you there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but you're coming and going.
Okay. So what I was saying is that you started in film many years ago, right? Like in your interest in documentary films and creating stuff. And that was a whole journey of becoming masterful at that. But if all your time is spent online, hoping to be discovered, becoming a YouTube star or whatever that is, you know, I think that something is really being lost for folks that are doing that.
Certainly, I cannot agree with you enough on that, because you know, first you had a skill to be known. Now you can be known. Having followers is not a skill. And if you're spending all your time trying to get followers without having a skill, then after a point in time you're going to hit a wall, because it's going to get very frustrating, and you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle very, very deeply. So it is. Coming back to your point, is there a mental health crisis? Yes, it is. It's been brewing for a while. There's nothing wrong with the internet. There's nothing wrong with the digital interfacing. The problem that I believe that exists is that there are no checks and balances. You're putting a young, vulnerable mind, a child's mind, into a space which is uncensored. No checks and balances. It's violent. The amount of bullying and malice and trolling that happens within little children. I mean, why do we have all kinds of why do we have all kinds of why do we have education at all? Because we want to present a certain circumstance, an encouraging, a nourishing, a nurturing, circumstance, environment to a child, so that he or she is able to train themselves better and know that, this is acceptable because it's in harmony with everything around you, and this is probably unacceptable because it hurts another person.
Right.
And
you think, you think about people behind a screen where there's a certain amount of, it's like cyber courage or cyber meanness that comes out, where people will say things online that they would never say to someone's face, especially someone that you needed to see again. When we lived in communities, when we weren't such a global internet community, right? You had to sort of have manners, at least a little bit, because you were going to see Betty Sue again at church or wherever. Where I feel like on the internet, there's this anonymous thing that kind of brings out the lowest in some folks. It brings out the lowest
common
human.
denominator.
Yes, exactly.
Instead of the highest common factor. It brings down the lowest common denominator. That is true. And also earlier, if there was somebody who was being violent or being mean, the community around in its own way would give him or her signal saying, this is not acceptable. But now you can go on the net and you find enough people who think your way, and there is a sense of social cohesion, and that actually emboldens you.
Yep.
So yes, to your point, exactly. I so agree with that. The other one comment,
go ahead.
And adding to that is, we're talking only about the visible net at the moment, but the moment one begins to consider the dark net or the dark, deep net, that's a completely different ballgame. So we are living in disturbing times, and I'm sure that human history over its long period has always been disturbing. I mean, I'm sure the world wars were not pleasant in any way, or for that matter, every decade has had its challenge. But never before, to my mind, in human history, have we seen this kind of change so quickly. Never before have our worlds turned so much, so quickly. And that, I think, requires more thought. We need to take a few steps back and seriously consider, where is this all going? Where is this leading to? Which is what the Subtext of Anger does, or tries to do, I think.
What I love about this book is that it's bringing the responsibility and the empowerment back to the person. So it's less about, yes, you're correct, we're dealing with all of this stuff. And yet, one of the quotes I love from the book was from a Buddhist nun, what's her name? Tenzin Palmo, yes, who said, "We cannot breathe in the past or breathe in the future. We can only breathe now." And this present moment consciousness, the need for this being here now, I thought was just so profound and so true. So how do you yourself, with all the stuff that you're doing, get yourself to be here now?
It takes a practice, because yes, the mind begins to race very easily and very quickly. When I'm going for a walk, I try to center myself. I try to also remind myself time and again that, if my mind is taking over, then I need to step back. And if there's something that upsets me or stresses me out, I know it's just a thought. So basically, it's the practice is to be able to observe your mind. And not control it as much, but observe it, because I find when you try to control something, it actually grows. So when I'm able to say, if I'm stressed, for instance, or there's a lot on my mind, and I'm able to say, all right, that's what my mind is saying, but that's just my mind. I am a body. I am breath. I'm heart. I'm so much more. So I don't have to allow that to dominate all of me. And simple things bring us back, in fact, I think, which is what I talk about in the book as well. Just get up, take a walk, feel your body, sit on the piano if you have an instrument at home, tinkle, doodle on it, do anything, make yourself a cup of tea, feel your hands, doing the things that they're doing. So that's what it's very simple. One has to turn to simpler techniques that we are able to employ here and now. And not anything too profound or too complicated, I feel.
I agree, because if everything has like 15 steps, nobody's doing it, right? We need exactly what you're writing about in the book, which is accessible, quick, ways that we can bring ourselves back, because it is so tempting to be lost in thought, or to be projecting fearfully into the future, or ruminating regretfully about the past. And all of that is, sort of the monkey mind, as you talk about with that quote, that we need to get back in balance ourselves and have those techniques. I wanted to ask you if you would share a little bit about the subtext of anger. I just saw the promo. I'm going to include it in the show notes, but I'm so fascinated by this documentary film. And how long is the film?
The film, Terri, is 45 minutes. The promo that you saw is about 3 minutes, about 2.5 minutes.
So what inspired you to do this film?
I found that I've never been an angry person. I was not an angry child. I was not an angry teenager. And I was not an angry young adult. But in my mid-30s, I found that I was raging. There was this storm within. It was pulling me in different directions. And I think the root of that came from feeling entrapped, that we don't really have any real choices. We have to interface with this. Your life is already structured. Where are the real choices? If I don't want to be on this digital interfacing, do I have a choice? Can I live my life? If I don't want to clutter my mind with 5 different gadgets. So that was one of those contributions. If I don't want to be part of the space, do I have a choice? And I found that I didn't. And I think some of that anger that I experienced came from that. And so what I keep a journal, and I began to find that I was stuck in a pattern. My mind, my brain seemed to have gotten stuck within a certain groove, because irrespective of what was coming from the outside, my first reaction was one of anger. And that was not me. That was not how I had known myself most of my life. So, that's where the idea for the subtext of anger began, because I thought to myself, someone like me who has education, who has support, can feel such rage, what's going on. And therefore, and this rage actually is lost potential, because you're battling it takes all your energy to battle that. It takes all your energy just experiencing it, because it's pulling you apart in different directions. So that's where it began from, that can we get stuck within an emotion? Does anger get you stuck? It's like a whirlpool. I discovered it's like a whirlpool. You think there's a lot happening, but actually nothing's happening. You're stuck. It's in one plane. It just goes round and round in that one plane. And so I began to write. I began to read and I wrote to various experts all over the world. A lot from the US, in fact, across the US, right from the East Coast to the West Coast. And I also interviewed people in London and in India. And we actually did about 80 different interviews. And what was interesting was that whomever I wrote to said, we'll do this film. And these are leading experts of the world. So I was very fortunate to get that. And we shot, it took me 4 years to make this film. And my concern was this, that are we living in a time where the systems around us are increasingly driving us to anger? It's not just me or you. Is it the very milieu that we are living in, this whole interfacing, this whole pressure of instant, the speed, this noise that is coming through our interfacing, is that leading us to anger? And I believe that yes, which is why I made the subtext of anger.
Amazing. So we'll put all the information in the show notes where people can find you and find that. I think the anger thing I've noticed in my therapy clients from one decade to the next, because I've been doing it about 25 years, that there is more aggression, it seems. Because, and I don't know, I can connect it a little bit to the instant gratification of the way that we've been living, right? We used to not have phones in our pocket, right? You were going to talk to someone, you'd make a plan to talk to them at like 9 o'clock at night, but you're meeting someone somewhere, you're not texting them, you just show up at the time, at the place. And I mean, it seems so old school now, but that's how it was. And there's almost something about the ability to get anything now, to get anything on Amazon, to get everything delivered, there's such little work or patience in some way that it goes into really our daily living, that any slight frustration will have people being like, this is ridiculous, like getting overly angry. And I'm like, wow, we're conditioned in some way, if this is the way that you're living. So I'm so fascinated. And you have experts from everywhere, Harvard. I mean, I was so impressed. I was like, who are all of these people? And how did she get them to say yes, as you mentioned? And I'm sure they're probably inspired by the topic as you are inspired by the topic.
Yes, Terri, thank you. Thank you also for bringing, the fact that our world now sounds very quaint, the world that you and I probably grew up with. And I want to tell all the young people who might be listening to us that, we're not putting them down for the technology they're using. I mean, if we tell a young person today, let's take your phone away, he or she will be completely at sea. But I do want to say, to your point, that when we were in school and we had to turn up for practice theater practice or music practice, there would be one little note on a dashboard somewhere that said, practice play so-and-so. Whereas now it takes 195 messages on WhatsApp. If 6 people have to get together, I'm down, I'm in the car, I'm down, I'm taking the lift, I'm outside your door, I'm ringing the doorbell, and, here, this is happening. And that consumes energy. If we're talking about saving the planet today, have we at the moment even begun to consider how much energy it takes to bring something to our screens? All these internet cables which are crisscrossing the world under its oceans and disturbing, of course, all the life that is in the ocean. Leave that aside. But and the satellites that are orbiting and all the radiation that's coming to make us bring these images to our screen, there is a cost to it. Of course, it's useful, but there is a cost to it. And if we're going to use it indiscriminately, then we're hugely the problem, and we're contributing to it. So I don't mean to say that we need to dismiss it all or disrespect any one thing all. My point really is, where do we find a center point where we can make use of something but respect the fact that there is a cost? And how do we find a balance so that we're using something for what it needs to be used, and that's it, maybe just work, and no more than that. And the problem is that, therefore, companies have to tell us that there is a cost to all the social media interaction that we're doing.
You see the cost to the social fabric, though, at least I do, certainly in the U.S., that there are people who, especially the pandemic, right? Anyone who leaned towards being an introvert or wanting to stay home. I mean, obviously, we were locked down. The pandemic was like the perfect way to never leave your house. And I know people who get most of their interaction online. And again, the pandemic seems to never be ending. So hopefully, eventually, it will get to the point where we're socializing in a more normal way. But I feel like a lot of what we've experienced in the last 2 years also made this issue of excessive screen use worse. It exacerbated it because we kind of had to do it. Kids can't go to school. They had to be on there, so I don't think we will know for a long time the psychological and emotional and societal ramifications or fallout from what we've experienced. But I will be keeping my eyes open to see.
Yes, and also, like I said, the digital interfacing has helped us through the pandemic. But we have to recognize that when you are on a treadmill, it does not substitute for taking a walk out in the open. It's a good substitute if it's raining, or if it's too cold, or if it's snowing. But if you can walk outside or run outside, that's really the best thing to do. Similarly, if there's a crisis and we need to speak on screens, that's fine. But it cannot be the first and only choice or the primary choice.
Yeah, totally agree. I have one last question to ask you that I ask many of my guests, because I'm obsessed with boundaries, is personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle, and how did you overcome it, if you have?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Yes, but I know what you mean by boundaries because I've read your book, and I think it's a very, very engaging book and a useful book. So
thank you.
I think my personal boundary has been that I've been a shy person as a child, and therefore I did not realize that I have many inhibitions, social inhibitions. And I've had to first acknowledge them, which has taken a fair amount of time, because you realize that, you could have said this or you could have done that, but you didn't, because there was just something holding you back, or something that was holding you back from expressing yourself, or just saying what was coming to you. So that, for me personally, has been a great challenge. And then when I broke through that boundary, it was like, if you have somebody on a leash and you let them go, then there is no control. So I thought that maybe I went the other way. But because I went the other way, I feel now I'm more at a center point. And I'm most comfortable here. And what keeps me at the center is that I'm trying to respect both sides.
Right.
And I find
I love that though.
And nothing really, I don't think any solution, and I say that in the book, that there are no solutions that lie at the extremes.
Right.
It is always
Agreed.
somewhere in the center of the circle. Because at the center, from the center of the circle, you actually need to respect everything. Everything is of equal value to you.
Right.
So, intellectually, I understand that, and I love it, but it's a practice, and one can only stay at it.
Indeed. Please tell my listeners or anyone watching this where they can find you. And of course, we'll include all of that in the show notes.
Do you mean through email? Is that what?
No. I mean, you have a website. You have a.
Of course. I have a website. They can find me at vandanakohli.com. I am still reticent about technology and not very. I know it's a crime now. I know that, but I have so many things to do in the real world that I forget that I need to put them up on the virtual world. So they will find stuff about me probably scattered all across the internet and not all of it on my website. I'm okay with that, and I hope anyone who's searching for information is okay with that as well.
Absolutely. This was so fascinating, and I so appreciate you doing it because I think it's kind of late where you are. Just thank you so much for what you're doing in the world. I just appreciate your big, beautiful brain. Thank you. Thank you, Vandana.
Thank you so much, Terri, for having me with you, and thank you for giving me time on your show.